Yeah, you
All
should be able
set.
to.
Looks good. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Okay, so welcome to my presentation for NLP about Swiss German. It's the last one, as Yanis already mentioned. So, shortly about me. My name is Stucki. I have a Master of Science in Data Science. I'm currently a research assistant at ZHAW, and my focus was primarily automatic speech recognition for Swiss German. So anything between speech to text, dialect identification, text to speech, and so on. And if you want to reach me, my mail is down there and also on LinkedIn. So introduction, if you've been to the other SwissNLP crash courses, you may already be prepared for NLP stuff in general. So what are the challenges? What is the outlook in general? Specifically, mostly for standardized languages. We now want to bring the focus to the Swiss part of the Swiss NLP. So about Swiss German. What can we do with NLP on the Swiss German front? You may have asked yourself, if you are a native speaker, why is it so hard to actually be able that your phone, your computer, and so on be able to understand Swiss German? And I want to get into that now. So first up, what makes Swiss German special? First up, we're a small group of dialects in Switzerland. Our country has around 9 million inhabitants, but only around 4 to 6 million of those actually speak Swiss German or are in the Swiss German part of Switzerland, which is the orange part you see on the graph. And what is interesting for Swiss German is that while it's small geographically and the size of the people, it's very diverse. This grew historically due to Switzerland's nature of being a confederation of different cantons. And each canton had their pride, their own dialects, and even inside those cantons, there were large differences. So people from the city of Bern spoke differently than people from the mountains of Bern. Same in Zurich. Zurich City had a different dialect than maybe Winterthur. And these kind of differences make it even harder to actually define groupings of dialects in the context of Swiss German. What is also interesting is the loan words we have. So because we have also Italian and French, also Romansh in our country, we do have loan words for them. So instead of friseur, we say coiffeur. Instead of Fahrrad, we say Velo. Things that aren't normal in standard German. And what is also a key point is also that we don't have any standardized grammar or vocabulary and so on. So it means everyone in the end speaks how they want. What is also a point is that the distribution, because of population centers, regions like Zurich have much higher percentage of speakers than maybe Valais, which is only part of Wallis, the German part, and it doesn't have a lot of cities there, big ones, I would say. So there's an automatically uneven distribution of the dialects. And lastly, it's mostly spoken language or dialect group. This has changed a bit with digital communication. Let's take, for example, Instagram or WhatsApp. This changed a bit the landscape, but in general, it's a spoken language. What is also special in the case of Swiss German is that it's still widely used and continues to be used by all age groups in private and professional settings. This is very different compared to other regions, which I will get to now a little bit. After this, just some examples maybe. People don't know Swiss German very specifically, maybe if you're not a native speaker. There's oftentimes some differences to standard German when we write it. Like I said, no one has a standard transcript, so I may write this sentence, ich habe nicht viel verstanden, differently than maybe someone from Bern or someone from, let's say, Lucerne. So there's differences here. Comparison to other dialect regions, French, you may not know, had a lot of dialects a few centuries ago. This was suppressed top down after the French Revolution. as Paris tried to assert their dominance over the country and, in essence, put a standardized language in the whole of the region, which means now there's not a lot of speakers there, and it still continues to die as time goes on. Italian as well, there's a difference between the south and the north. The north, because of economic migration, has seen more of a standardization of the spoken language compared to the south, maybe, where migration is not that much happening. So there's still pockets in the south that actually speak and continue to speak dialects. And lastly, Arabic. There's a lot of different dialects in Arabic, more on a country basis and much more culturally diverse than Switzerland. So there's different dialect in Morocco, there's one in Egypt, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and so on. But what they also have in common is that they have a standard version of their language, the modern standard Arabic, same as for us with standard German. Now, in the context of NLP, what are the challenges? First up, data scarcity, which is a direct result of our small population size. That's why it's also considered a low resource language. That means that not a lot of data is available, at least publicly. Private companies may collect this data, be it through phone calls, through like insurance companies or mobile service companies. Banks also can collect their data, but publicly available data is quite limited. There are now some public data sets available. One of those is the STS200, the SCT4SG. They have around 200 hours and 350 hours respectively, which are also hosted on the SwissNLP site. So if you're interested in using these data sets, there's a link there to those. But in general, that's nothing compared to standardized languages, which may have around 10,000, 50,000, 200K hours of audio that is available for training, for usage, for analysis, which makes the whole challenge of doing NLP even more challenging. There's, like I said, huge variability in pronunciation, in spelling, in grammar between or even inside dialect groups, which means we don't have a ground truth for what's actually correct, especially on a written level. And lastly, there's code switching. So there's different languages are used sometimes in Swiss German, just because our country is made up of a lot of different people with different backgrounds. So of course, Swiss, but we also have we had immigration from Germany, from Italy, from France. There's use of English now just because of the usage of it in music, in films, and so on. But there's also uses of Albanian, Turkish, Serbian, and so on. So that also provides sometimes a challenge just because it's sometimes used in conversation. Now, for the actual NLP tasks, so I will go into speech to text and dialect identification. So first up, speech to text. How do we actually transcribe Swiss German automatically using tools? Like I said, there's no standard transcript, so standard grammar or vocabulary and so on. So what do? We use something that has a standardized orthography, which, for example, is standard German or phonemes. If you don't know phonemes, these are as is on the slides, they are the smallest unit of speech, which can distinguish one another more accurately than just a simple S as an example from the alphabet, which could be pronounced very differently depending on where you're from. And as these things are unique, we can actually use those downstream. So for speech to text, currently the easiest approach is just to train models to output standard German instead of outputting Swiss German. This has the advantage, like I said, of a standardized grammar. We can do more complex NLP operations on it, like topic modeling or sentiment analysis and so on. It's easier that way because there are existing tools for standard German already. Now, about the dialect groups. As I've said before, the boundaries are not fixed. It's not on a canton level, they're mostly fluid. So what is the approach here? It's currently, because there's not a lot of data available, it's to do dialect groupings, which are mostly done on a cantonal level, but what is also easier to do is just to let people decide for themselves. They're most often the best judges of their own dialect. So tools that were developed or for data sets group the dialects together, in general for 8 different regions, which you can see on the image down there. I will go through them maybe quickly, just so you know like what kind of families there are for dialects currently. So the biggest one currently is still Zurich, just because that's the largest population size. You have the Innerschweiz, which Lucerne, Zug, but also Uri, Schwyz, and so on belong to. You have the Ostschweiz, which Thurgau, Appenzell, and St. Gallen belong to. You have the Grisons, so Graubünden, which is very distinct, so it's its own dialect region for us. Then there's the Bern region, which has some parts of Fribourg, because if you may know, Fribourg is bilingual. So the western part is French and the eastern part is German. But of course, there's pockets and so on. So it doesn't get easy there. And lastly, there is Basel. So the city of Basel has its own dialect, which you may know. If you've heard some interviews, maybe from people from there, it's quite distinct from the rest of the dialects. And lastly, an interesting one is Aargau. This is because historically Aargau had a lot of influence from both Bern and Zurich, and also some part of Lucerne. So the region is actually split. There's a name for it, the Brünig-Reuss-Napf line, which goes nearly through the middle of it. And the western part is generally the Bernese dialect, and the eastern part is generally more the Zurich dialect. So people from there were actually able to decide for their own, are they more on the Bern side or more on the Zurich side? That was up to them. And so the current approach at ZHAW, the things we do currently is we use phonemes for dialect identification. The approach we use here is just to concat around 60 to around 100 seconds of audio from a speaker, transcribe it into phonemes, and use those phonemes with a naive Bayes classifier to output one of these 8 regions. So that actually works surprisingly well, just because we are actually able to use larger segments of audio instead of just maybe 2 or 3 seconds, which is harder for these models. And then for standard German, for speech to text, like I said before, we use standard German. There are a few models out that you can use for this. One of the most powerful ones currently is Whisper from OpenAI. We assume they used some Swiss German in their training. We're not sure what data exactly, but it is able to do it quite accurately. Of course, with issues here and there. If memory serves me right, it has around this 0.28 word error rate, but with a deviation of also 0.26. So depends on how good the audio is, the length of the audio, and so on. So just so you can actually maybe see like the performance of the different dialect regions, I just put a confusion matrix here of the classifier we use in our projects. There's actually generally dialects can be quite differentiated quite well. So especially Wallis and Graubünden with nearly a score of 1, just because native speakers know this as well. They're so distinct from the other dialects. So it's actually also easy for the classifiers to get them. The only issue we did see was with Zurich and Innerschweiz, just because they're quite close to each other regionally. The approach we used here to actually fix this issue is just to use a majority voting. So combine multiple segments of the same speaker, let majority voting do its thing, take the most common one, and then we can actually get a quite accurate representation of the speaker's dialect. You also see German here, but we just use those in a thesis. So let's continue. maybe a speech-to-text demo. I am sharing my audio. I do hope it is being transmitted. Maybe Janis can give me feedback with a head nod if it does.
Tyrus hat unseren Vorschlag aufgenommen und hat das Tele-Konzept studiert.
Okay, so you see, I did do the bold thing where it actually made an error. So Tyrus is not true. It did something wrong here. The rest is quite accurate. Maybe as a background, this is Whisper. I just wanted to clarify that this is Whisper, the large wave-3 model that we used here for the transcription.
Aber was ist denn, wenn in die ersten paar Monate dann schon quasi er dir nur alle 2 Tage zurück?
Here we see ZHAW was wrongly transcribed because it was EO as a him instead of ZHAW. Then lastly,
Prämie für Kinder sinkt hingegen 0,1% leicht.
So maybe you've heard it. This was someone from Grison, Graubünden, very distinct. The second one was from Zurich, and the first one was from Innerschweiz, if memory serves me correctly. There's also a demo. You can, if you are a Swiss German speaker, I'm sorry for those that are not, you can use a demo. I will put the link to this in the chat, where you can actually, I will pull it up here as well, so you see it as well, where you can actually upload your own audio or record yourself, submit it, and it should output the text. Maybe I need to put, where is the chat? One moment, please. Here. And it's in the chat, so all of you can use it. Maybe just watch that you're not that you're actually unmuted on Zoom, but not muted on, on the browser, so you can actually use it without interrupting. And yeah, I hope there are no problems there. So the thing is, as always with these things, the audio quality has to be good. If your microphone is bad, you can expect the model to actually also produce accurate output. So the better your audio quality, the clearer you speak, and most often the longer you speak as well, the more accurate it gets. The shorter segments, this is a thing of Whisper, how it was trained, because it was generally on 30-second samples instead of shorter ones. So the shorter ones, it may have issues because the missing part is just padded up with silence, essentially. So there may be issues there. But yeah, you can maybe play around a bit while I continue afterwards a bit. Maybe I'll give you a minute more or something so you have some fun with it. But yeah, maybe I'll continue.
Tyrus hat unseren Vorschlag aufgenommen und hat das
Aber was
Tele-Konzept
ist denn, wenn in die ersten paar
I'm sorry. That's just PowerPoint doing its thing. So next up, we have the first part of the pipeline for Swiss German, so audio to text, so we can actually do stuff with the text. Now, what can we do with this text? Either A, of course, we can use it for document stuff, analysis, and so on. But we can also go from text to speech. So that's the second part. The pipeline I will go into now. First up, text to speech, maybe some definitions if you're not sure. So in essence, it's you providing a text to the model. The model either A, uses a predefined speaker's voice, which it was trained on, and generates based on this text in the voice you give, or the model already has defined it for you, outputs the speech based on the text and the speaker. The next part is voice adaptation. This means the second part, the speaker part, can be changed. This is normally done by training models on a huge amount of different speakers. So the model is actually able to learn how to copy a given speaker and replicate it with the text you give it. That was one thing I did for my master's thesis, which you see that on the left, on the right, you see the data pipeline we used. You may see those 5,000 hours. You may ask yourself, where do these 5,000 hours come from? For Swiss German, we actually parsed the SRF audio. You have an API they provide publicly. You can register yourself on there, and for research purposes, it's allowed to use their audio. Commercial purposes are not allowed. So if you think of building a product with that data, be aware that is not allowed. So what we did, we used this audio of them. So it was generally podcast audio that we did segmentation on, voice activity detection. We cut the audio into samples based on the speaker. So only one speaker, preferably, on the audio sample, and then use that to transcribe it to German, standard German, the DA text here. Then transcribe it to phonemes and to dialect identification, then use it for training afterwards. So we used the same 8 regions you saw before in the presentation. We use those to train a model, which you now can also check out with a demo, which I will add again to the chat, and I hope it works. Moment. This is the second link. And you see it right here. So in the first box, you can add your standard German, it has to be standard German text. You can, again, use your own audio, record it, and then you can decide which dialect region you want to have. You can submit it, it will generate it for you up here, and then you can listen to it. So maybe you can hear yourself in the Graubünden dialect, in the Wallis dialect. It's not perfect by far. It will have issues, but it is always fun to see how you would sound in a different dialect. I can also do an example with you. So I will use the same person you heard before, the person from Grison. I hope it works. Yes. Maybe I will. Yeah. Use a random standard German sentence that is hopefully generated using AI. Here. So I want him, maybe Bernie is okay. I'll play the audio maybe shortly so you can hear what he says. I think my notebook is a bit struggling.
Aber was ist denn, wenn in den ersten paar Monaten dann schon quasi er dir nur alle 2 Tage
This
zurück...
is person from Zurich, but nonetheless, we'll submit it. Generate it, we can hear what she says.
Der rote Äpfel liegt aber auf dem Tisch. Also jetzt
Okay, as you see, this is a big failure. One of the reasons is because it's spontaneous speech that is in the reference. There's one thing I mentioned before. If you input something complicated, something complex, the model also has issues. If we now use maybe the other person, maybe it's this one. I don't think it's this one.
Prämie für Kinder sinkt hingegen 0,1% leicht.
Let's resubmit it.
Doch ein D editionieren muss, aber ist
Okay, maybe resubmit it.
die nog gewoon niet eens. Er zijn nooit this so
Okay, this is not working very well. I know this. Maybe presentation issue. So it's the same. One last try. If it fails again, I have to be sorry. I think that
in nog arenas, die rote jetzt noch bezieht.
okay, no, I think it's not working accurately.
So I think
Maybe a
the
long-
voice cloning part works quite well, right? It's the
Yeah,
basically
the
the same
voice
voice that we
cloning.
hear.
Correct, yes, but sadly the sentence is not. But yeah, this is, I remember correctly. Yeah, there was one issue with the model where, as I mentioned earlier, shorter sentences are a bit of an issue. So longer segments should perform better. But while I continue, you can try it out further. Maybe you have some good results there. But let's get to the second part of this whole thing. Why this matters? Why should we even invest effort to make Swiss German actually usable with NLP? So one big thing is just inclusion. Things like elderly people, children that may not be able to speak very well in either standard German or even English. Actually reducing those barriers by having tools available for us, either be transcribing or even text to speech, can help them immensely. I mean, even thinking about maybe in the hospital scene, the older you get, maybe you have someone caring for you that isn't able to speak very well Swiss German, maybe only standard German or even another language. So you may want to be able to actually converse with them. Things like this actually help language learners as well. You could sit at home, maybe learn Swiss German, stuff like that. Then a digital divide, so standardized language tool speed, voice assistants, translation apps, and so on. They're often done for standard languages. So this may also be a hurdle for some people speaking Swiss German. So you always have to translate what you want to say first into standard German or in English, which a trained person is able to do quite easily, but still it is a hassle sometimes. So you maybe just want to speak in your own mother tongue and things like this. Then preservation, dialects are always changing or disappearing. Even in Switzerland, certain mountain regions do lose their dialects currently. So being able to actually replicate those in the future would actually be a huge thing to actually preserve those dialects. And lastly, this goes with the first point, it's just technology in general, improve assistance, translation, be that on phone calls. You already hear them, the voice assistants, sometimes you don't like them at all, but if they're able to actually accurately help you, even in Swiss German, there's actually a huge improvement. And also having a sound toolbox for Swiss German may benefit other dialect groups. So being able to do it on a small scale, on a dialect group that is not big, but able to actually get good results, we can actually use those tools that's maybe in other dialect regions. So what's next? One thing that's actually always ongoing is larger data sets. As always with data science currently, more data means better models. Of course, there's stuff going on in the background, but having more data actually available for training, for usage, for analysis would help a lot. Then the intermediate representation, as I talked about before, the phonemes, the standard German, there's also ongoing research there. How can we improve that? Can we fine tune, maybe whisper and so on? There's stuff going on there. And then, of course, that's more broadly in the future is just more fine-grained approaches. As I've said in the middle of the presentation, we currently just group them into 8 different regions. But of course, it would be nice if we can actually say, I want the dialect of maybe my hometown, maybe my if you're somewhere from a mountainous region, from my valley, and so on. So being able to actually do it more fine-grained is also something that's ongoing. Of course, there's always ethical considerations doing things like this. The most common thing actually happening probably would be scams, like the well-known ankle trick, where generally older people are tricked into maybe sending money, sending help to people that are posing as their nieces or their niece. Things that could happen now in Swiss German as well, of course. There's biases inherently to the data collection as well, just because, as I said before, there's an imbalance between maybe the Zurich area and the Valais region. So certain dialect regions may just get overrepresented and get better usage compared to other regions. There's, of course, a potential for workplace disruption. We have to think about those. And lastly, even though I said preservation, there could also be a loss of linguistic diversity just because it does freeze dialects in time. So in general, languages are always changing with their nature. Doing NLP stuff on it, like I said, TTS now, it could just freeze them in time and actually be a hindrance in the future. So we have to think about those as well. So maybe we can go to the questions part of this presentation. I'm open for anything.
Yeah, first let's give Samuel a round of applause. I think that's well deserved.
Thank you very much.
I see that there are two questions in the chat currently. One is asked by Jacob. So he's asking, from your experience, do you see significant differences in Swiss German performance between Whisper version 2, version 3, and version 3 Turbo? And so just as a reminder, Whisper was the model that you used in your first demo that was about transcribing recordings of Swiss German.
Correct, yes. We did not see that huge of an improvement, but at certain points there was improvement using the V3 model. There's also some downsides in general with the V3 model, some artifacts that were introduced there. But in general, it did perform a little bit better. I cannot give you currently numbers for that, but I could run some experiments and get back to you if you want. You could also leave just an email or something in the chat and I can get back to you if you're interested in actual performances. Turbo, we didn't look at specifically, only V2 and V3.
So all of those are open source, or what's the difference between 3 and 3 Turbo?
They're not, I mean, they're open source to use. They're downloadable on Hugging Face, as far as I know. I'm not sure about commercial licensing. That's another thing. But for research, you can use it. It's open source in that sense.
What's the difference between version 3 and version 3 Turbo?
I'm unsure. I don't want to give a wrong answer. As far as I know, it's just smaller and also faster than the V3 model, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So there's a second question in the chat from Bruno. He's asking, there is no open source text-to-speech model rather than model engine for Swiss German, right? Piper, etc. do not perform well.
Correct. Even the one model we used, which is the XTTS V2, I can pull it up quickly. This was, I hope you see it. It is available on Hugging Face, but I can only use it. It was developed by Stucki. I'm not sure how they are correctly pronounced. AI, but the company has gone bankrupt, I think, in last February, but the code is still available. We used this model, but you can't use it for commercial stuff, sadly. But for research, it's usable.
Now, Martina is asking, did you already think of applications in the entertainment area, for example, in the production of film, music, games, etc.?
we did think about it, especially what the impact is if such a model actually gets powerful enough. I mean, the first point of contact with this was our data itself. It was sourced from SRF, from podcasts specifically. So there's people behind that producing those, giving their voice in essence to these programs, and being able to replicate that will have an impact. How it's actually applied, that's a thing to be discussed. We're not actually going directly forward with this kind of with these kinds of ideas. We currently have projects in other areas, like healthcare, or also with childcare, especially, where we can actually replicate voices of children, not replicate, but use generated audio of them, in that sense, children that don't really exist, but be able to create chatbots with them, or text speech bots with them, more in that direction.
Maybe you want to elaborate why you're doing that.
Especially the children part. It starts with the ethical implication. Recording a children's voice, using it in products is just, in a sense, not good, point in case. But being able to actually use bots with children, be that maybe in language learning, in helping them with maybe problems in math and so on, but not having, in that sense, a parent next to it, which may scare them. Scare them is the wrong word, but inhibit them a little bit with speaking openly. Actually having a children's voice, maybe speaking with them, actually maybe more fruitful for it in that sense.
Okay, so I don't think there's any more questions in the chat. Samuel, do you have like a final slide that you would like to show us, a conclusion?
I don't think so. Maybe just the references, maybe. So they're also on the recording. And I'm not just freestyling them, but generally not. No. Thank you very much for your attention.
Then I have a final slide. I just want to raise attention again for the SwissNLP days happening next week.